and George Waugh, Matthew Cole, Bruce Taub, also present is Stacy Faber, the board secretary. The building commissioner of the town of Orleans is excused, having corresponded with me, and I excused him because this meeting doesn't require any input from him, and it's not a hearing. This is something which we probably might have, except for the open meeting law, we're talking about administration. Now, you know that this rules and procedure, there's a separate uh, public document. It's not part of the zoning ordinance, but it's rules and procedures for the Board of Appeals, which provides uh, things like, what an applicant has to file and how many copies of have to be distributed in connection with the application. But it doesn't deal with what we're dealing with now, which is the efficient and transparent operation of the Zoning Board of Appeals. To me, it's of some great consequence that my failure to pay attention to providing copies of the decisions to everyone has left kind of an information void. That is to say, when we, as we've discussed off and on over the past 7 months or a year, precedent, the making of decisions which bind us to some extent to make a similar decision in some similar application. If you don't have the previous decisions, then we could be confronted by an applicant and to some embarrassment. So I think the best way, or what I propose to do, is that regardless of who is the author of a decision, that it, after filing, be circulated to all the members of the zoning board. Now, that's not the responsibility of the town clerk, and I didn't approach Kelly Darling on, with that in mind. I think it's something internal. It's good management, and it's, as I said, I didn't pay attention to it, and I think that was probably what you do with, or how you file, or how you consider the decisions once they've been filed is up to you, but it's certainly you're entitled to them, because maybe someone is writing the decision, but it's collective work that's being done by a public board. To that extent, it should have been shared. I don't know if is that explanatory, Lynn?
Yes, I got it. Yes.
Could I ask a simple tech question, if you will?
Yes.
Why is this not solvable at this point in time by uploading all of the decisions as we wish to a file, and we all have access to them, and it gets posted to the file automatically, period?
I don't know if that's how it's indexed, Bruce. I don't know how the town clerk.
They at least have numbers. They have case numbers. They're numerically numbered. They have date indices when they were decided, and they have, if you will, plaintiffs' names. So it shouldn't be hard to organize as such if we can get them into a file, which I don't know how much material there is, or how.
Well, we could even, yeah, we could put them in a shared Google Drive.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then as they were done, they'd go into all of our shared, go into the Google Drive that's shared with all of us.
Exactly.
You think, well, Lynn, the best thing would be to have that date stamp from the town clerk. Then you know the official result.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we can then that would be my responsibility, or maybe Stacy could pave the way to determine whether we could prevail upon the town clerk to do that much for us. It wouldn't involve if it were done in a Dropbox or a Google Drive, that would be very simple, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm. It would.
Be great for the public too, actually. All
It
right.
is. Yeah. Um,
Okay.
I have to speak as a dinosaur, but I certainly like that piece of paper that I get. And I'm not sure if just because of Zoom, we're doing things that become very difficult to do. In the old days, simply a copy was made off and put into our slot at town hall, and we would get a copy of it and see exactly what it said and read it and file it however we wanted to. Now, certainly, to be blunt about it, with Zoom, I'm just getting tired of trying to run every damn thing that comes in, off the computer, and waste my paper and ink, which ran out the other day, to get all this done. So that's just my personal comment. I think, maybe we're talking, we'll never be out of Zoom. But if we ever get out of Zoom, it's just so easy to run them off and stick them in the file and people pick them up. That's it.
Well, it would be that, George, because, then there's any number of different ways that could be, a decision could be handed, say, to the board secretary, who would then circulate it as necessary and then attend to the filing with the town clerk. That's a separate step for Stacy. But the fact of the matter is, none of this is easy now because you can't even go to the front counter, George.
I understand that. That's what I'm talking about. I understand Zoom is a very complicating input, and it is difficult. It is difficult, but maybe someday we won't have to use Zoom. We should be thinking also how it will be done in the future.
No, but the point of the Google Drive is it shouldn't be abandoned, because that takes care of that. At least that's not only a fail-safe, but it's a much better way and all, except you won't have your paper, George.
Well, Mr. Marnick, I think what we could do is, if the decision's drafted over Google Drive, somebody sends it to me and I'll submit it like I do, because I have to, every time we get applications in, I get it electronically, but I have to go into the Nauset room and I have to combine all the PDFs and all the information and then send it to the town clerk. So I could send it to Cynthia and Kelly, and then they would send back a stamped copy, that it was, and then I could print them out and put it out in the, where I put all the applications for you guys in the top left. It's not a problem, George, at all. It's just figuring out how we want to do it and get, a procedure going.
That's fine. That is good. Maybe you could sketch that procedure for us to follow. That means me especially. How do I sign that then, Stacy?
Do you have access to Adobe, like an electronic signature? Because if you have Adobe PDF Writer, you can electronically sign, or you can sign it and scan it back to me like you do with the advertising invoices, whatever is easiest for you, or I can leave it out at town hall for you to sign, because I go to town hall. Every time we get a case, I have to go in and I, bring the case upstairs and put it in our filing cabinet, and I do the abutters letters, and I have to mail them certified letters. So I go to town hall, a few times a month. So it's not a problem at all for me to leave anything out for you guys, or, let Kelly know that you guys are going to come in and they can let you in, or let Ada know. But Ada's only there a couple days a week. So that's why I've been leaving everything outside for you guys.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Then I could sign it.
Okay.
I sign the decision and scan it and send it to you the way I've been doing the other things I have to sign for you.
Okay, perfect.
And that way we take out of that the problem of security of electronic signatures.
Oh, perfect. And then after it's signed and it's sent to Kelly and they receive it, I'll print it out on the town paper because they pay for it, and then I'll leave one out for everybody. So they have the paper.
Okay,
Can you, Stacy, also put it on a Google Drive for those of us that would like to look at, just not deal with paper or not?
Yeah, can we upload PDFs to Google Drive or a Dropbox? I can do either, I can put it on a disk and make sure you guys get it somehow, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I'll make sure it's, distributed, both, physically and electronically.
that's really the important thing.
Okay. So I'll write that out for everybody so you guys will know. Like for instance, like Kelly and Cynthia are really good electronically. Like for case 2149 for Penrose, there's so much or 2146, whatever it is, there's so much correspondence that I have to go in and just submit the first 109 pages of the application, and then they have all the subsequent stuff. She's just going to move it over. She goes, oh, I have it electronically on the website, so I'll just put it for March 17th. So it's not hard for them to do that at all.
That's great.
I don't mean to complicate the situation, but it seems to me that there is real value in having these having access to the decisions on electronically with some sort of a link to the town website. I mean, I think it, in terms, it's surprising to me that you really have to go to the clerk's office, I think, to find out what's going on and go through all that.
Yeah.
I think it would be a real trendsetter for the town to publish our decisions and have them on some sort of a electronic holder that has a link to the ZBA page on the town website.
That could be easily done for you guys. You guys got a page on the town website, and we can put, I can work with Stacy to set up a simple file system on the website on your page to put things. So we can do it by like case number.
Yeah. That's how.
And like, so each case number can have its own page, and I can upload all the files that correspond with it. So it would all be in one area. So we can do things like that.
Probably more helpful if we're organized by address.
Yep.
Street address.
Yeah, we can do that. And I can make a page for each street address, however you guys want to organize it. And then any corresponding documents can be uploaded to it.
I think it'd be good.
It's going to make a world of difference when it comes to writing the decision in Penrose, because the proper form of that decision, well, with any decision, is to list all the subsidiary supports and documents which have been connected with it. And once we did as we once we did and circulate a solicitation to all the boards, we got a number of responses that we otherwise would have received. I think Penrose might have come in a little bit they came in a different way. In other words, we really weren't the last stop. That was a trial balloon, that first hearing, which was, and there's nothing the matter with that, because it's what George said in his previous experience. It took a long time for an applicant to wend their way through 40B, and all of it was done at the ZBA level. And in my previous experience with like Habitat for Humanity, they knew the drill, and not that Penrose doesn't, but Habitat just waltzed through the zoning board because they knew the drill, and it was very, very seamless. So having Sarah, that kind of because we've been all receiving that periodically in the past 3 weeks. They've sifted through, and getting that back in a cohesive and organized file is difficult. So And, but that's the magnificent problem with that application. You have, to a lesser extent, that with every application, because there is more than just a 4 or 5 page application. There are plans and architectural drawings and correspondence that's got to get to the right place, and one place, and it usually is considered. In generally,
You know, could I get, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I'm not sure we, you know, when we're filing, if we're talking about filing decisions online or giving access to them online, I'm not sure we need all the backup materials. We just really need the material, the decisions. I don't think we have to give up all the backup, you know, maybe you put the application, but I would think just the decisions would be important, because the decisions explain what the issue was. We usually, in the decisions, we list who objected and who spoke in favor. I'm not sure that we need to do a lot of additional materials on a searchable site.
no, I didn't mean that, Jerry. What I meant is that the decisions generally have reference to plans and drawings and certain other documents which supported the application.
There's also a policy, there's also a real risk for the board here, is that if we make all these decisions available, we will be confronting precedent. We'll be confronting people who have gone back and said, well, you did this in XYZ case 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But that's good government, you know. I mean,
I think it is. I've come to think that is. That's something that the board will have to confront. What's the matter? I don't see anything the matter with that. We've discussed this before. I think I've treated each case. I've always thought that each case was a unit, and really there was no precedent at all. As well as what we were mainly concerned with was satisfaction of the criteria for which governed for the zoning board, which the zoning bylaw set forth that we had to be satisfied to allow the relief that the applicant was looking for. But on the other hand, maybe it's not searchable, Jerry, but the fact of the matter is, someone who is diligent could go in and look at previous decisions, search them themselves by going, we'll say in the scheme of things, if there were no movement restrictions, could go to the front counter and look at the decisions that were filed with the town clerk and determine whether there was any commonality which would kind of bind the board.
it's just a lot easier online to do that.
It was, well, certainly would be. I don't know that we need to make it searchable, but the fact of the matter is to make it available first to us.
I think what you do,
That's a good thing.
what you do as a petitioner is you go around town and look at some house that has what you want and see if there's a decision from the zoning board and say, hey, I just want what you did in this case. You
Well,
know?
of course you would. That would be a good preparation. Fact of the matter is, some of the agents who come in before us, they have a pretty good handle of who they've been with before and what was involved, because they refer to it.
David Little knows all the precedents.
Well, David knows, and so does Ben Zender.
Yeah, right.
So do you think I think I have do we think we have a sense of how the process ought to be working with the filing and management of the decision?
So just to repeat, what I understand is we'll have a place that we can go to on the town website, just like we can go today and see past agendas and we see minutes, mostly draft minutes. We can go and we can see the decisions as well on the website, right? Is that what we're saying, Sarah?
Yep. Yeah, I can set a section up for that for you on the ZBA page.
Okay.
And can you let us know when that's ready for testing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get you a page set up tomorrow. And then, we can put, and we can start it with the Penrose stuff first if you want.
Okay, that's fine. Good. Management of minutes. We do have draft minutes, and they've been circulated some time ago. Lynn has made a good, at probably some great expense of time and effort, some revisions. I only saw them in a PDF file, so they can't be manipulated or managed right now in the form that they are. I'm wondering whether there's a sense, and also Lynn has, by correspondence with me, has educated me as to the difference between minutes and decisions. The minutes are not necessarily more informal, but they're more elaborate in so far as they disclose the actual flow of the hearing. We discussed that the decisions may not be as elaborate because it's the decision itself which has to have integrity in case there's a challenge. But the minutes are something different, and I think there's a problem with having the minutes being managed by a committee, but I need help as to what the board may suggest as to how we move from the draft minutes to minutes which the public can read and have an understanding of what we are actually doing, bearing in mind that there is some business that we do that doesn't result in the decision. For example, December 2nd, there was a commenced hearing. The application was eventually withdrawn, but there still needs to be a narrative of what we did, what happened, who presented, and what was done. And there's other business exclusive of, we'll say, tonight's work, which otherwise could have been, which is really an informal meeting, even though we technically called it to order and publicized it. So really nobody's business except our own. So what think you about management of minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I have a sort of, would like to advocate for philosophy of minutes. I've always been supportive of skeletal minutes because especially when you have decisions that lay out the reasoning for our decision and the people who spoke and all the material you really need is in the decision. When you have minutes, if you start getting too inclusive, you first run the risk of tripping over the decision. In other words, there's material that gets in there sloppily that doesn't jive with the decision. And secondly, it becomes very onerous if you want to keep a full record of minutes. And I think minutes can only get you into trouble. And I've always been, for corporate minutes, I've been an advocate of skeletal minutes, just sort of give you an outline of what we did at the meeting, maybe who was there, what objections were made, but very skeletal, not get into our discussions or, because that's all then led in the decision. And that's where you really want them to go, because that's where we attend to more carefully than our minutes. And I think when you start getting the minutes and you're going to make sure the minutes jive with the decision in every matter, It just adds to the burden. And I don't know that people go to the minutes to really find out what we did, especially if we have online access to the actual decision.
So I did talk, we talked a little bit. Sherry and I talked, and my views maybe just a little different in that, I don't know if I'd call it skeletal. I don't think, and you, Jerry, you convinced me we should not say, you know, Mr. Cole said this and Miss Van Giesen said that. I mean, that we shouldn't do that. But what I thought, and I'm going to use an example, because to me it's easiest to talk about an example. The most contentious thing that we've had since I've been on the group was the Atlantic company signage, and that got, and the penalizing of them got voted down. But it was voted down, and I was one that voted no, and Bruce Taub voted no, so it was 4-2. I voted no only because the attorney for the guy that runs the Atlantic workshop, I think correctly pointed out that you have to have the proper citations in your letter levying a fine. And they weren't there. And he was going to court. He was already in court. So I thought, we'll send a letter without that, or we'll do that, and he'll just go to court and get it overturned. So let's issue another letter that has those citations. It wasn't because I thought it was wrong substantively. And I thought it was important to point out that there was discussion and concern about the lack of the proper citations, so that people would know the reason we said no was not because of the substance, but simply the form of the letter saying you're going to pay a fine. And so I thought when something is voted against, or the zoning board is divided, there should be some statement in the minutes about what the issue was that caused that to happen, I think, without trying to quote everybody, but just characterize in general, these issues were raised, these concerns were raised, and the vote was whatever. Would you agree, Jerry? Is that that's not skeletal enough?
No, what I would say to that is that there's no decision. There wasn't a published decision on that matter. So perhaps it does call for the minutes being a little more full. But then again, it's a slippery slope, Lynn, because, I'd say, well, Lynn's going to get her reasoning in there, and I'd like to get mine, because I look like a fool because I voted for it, and clearly it was illegal, So then I say, well, Lynn got her reasoning in, maybe I should get my reasoning in. It's a slippery slope. But the point is, that was a matter that didn't result in a decision. It was so it does justify perhaps a fuller discussion. But there again, I think you got to make it as limited full discussion as you can make it and still convey the meaning, if you follow me.
Yeah. So go ahead.
There's something, that is correct. It did not result in a decision, so that the explanation of the voting was quite appropriate. Now let's go one another step. Then we must allow in the future those a minority voter, which in a case which does result in a decision, should be allowed the opportunity to, at the time of the hearing, to state the reasoning if the member wants to do that, so that the decision would reflect the reasoning for the dissent. How does that sound?
I agree, but that's in the
That
decision.
will take.
I agree, Michael, but that's in the decision and not the minutes.
No, in the decision. That's right.
I agree with that. If someone, you should give someone the opportunity to explain why they voted in dissent.
Right, in dissent on when the decision is done. But in the case with no decision, then Lynn is correct.
And it should be incumbent on the dissenter who wants it to write that up.
Yes, yes. All right, then would it be, Mike, let's go another step. Will it be necessary, or is it advisable for the author of the decision to vet the decision before the filing with Stacy, and therefore to the town clerk?
Just in my opinion, human nature being what it is, that'll just really delay the process. What I would say is that you should, whoever's writing the decision, say if anybody wants to review this before it, I wouldn't routinely send it around to everyone on the board, because it'll never make the rounds in a timely decision.
Yeah, I agree. That would be tough. Yeah, we don't want to be picky.
Thank you. Thank you. I haven't afforded anyone that extravagance. I mean, I've written the decisions and called them my own without, maybe not wanting to allow micromanagement. but on the other hand, that isn't always fair.
Could I use another example on the minutes? I want to use another one with somebody else, and then we can ask Matthew. This is going to be about something you did. It's related to Penrose. And in our first discussion, Matthew asked a lot of questions, and all of them seemed to me important. I don't know that they're going to make a difference in the decision. They might, but I don't know that. But I thought it was important to note, he asked about the exterior looking appropriate and good, and I thought that kind of thing, particularly in something that's going to be heard again, should be in the minutes, if nothing else, to refresh ourselves on what we were concerned about. So I just thought, that, and whether you say Matthew or one member, but I thought, let's note that they were asking about the materials for the building and its energy efficiency, which seemed important to me. Well, I guess, Matthew, I'd ask you what you think, since I'm quoting you.
Sure. So I think one thing that we do either consciously or subconsciously is we apply somewhat of a sliding scale to applicants for the application materials based on the size of the application. If someone comes in for a simple project, we accept simple materials. And if somebody comes in for something like a 40B at the far end of the spectrum, we expect every I to be dotted and every T to be crossed and all of the plans to be in place and all that. And I would suggest that perhaps we apply the same to our minutes, and something like a 40B application, I would think our minutes should be pretty detailed and include all of those inquiries that have been made, so that the town sees that the zoning board has done its due diligence and really asked probing questions and drawn out applicant information from the applicant. So again, I think there should be some proportionality to the size of the project that we're reviewing, how detailed our notes are.
I agree with that.
Well, part of that, Lynn, was that the minutes are flagging follow-ups in continued hearing.
Right.
And that's something that, especially now in this particular case, we expected to see the applicant a month later, and because other things have intervened and the applicant has looked for more time to prepare, then unless we have good minutes, we're gonna forget that we meant, except the examiner, like Matt will probably won't forget that, but I
Right.
would, if it weren't in the minutes.
Mhm.
So, are I think that this has been helpful. We're on the same page on preparation of minutes. I don't know that we can, Stacy, can you provide the minutes, the draft minutes again without, the PDF, so that we can,
The ones that Lynn did, I only have in PDF also, but the
Okay.
ones that are on the website, I do have in Word format. I don't know, Lynn, do you have your minutes or do you use a Mac? Is that why it came across?
Oh,
as
let me
PDF?
go back and I'll transform them all to Word. I
Okay.
didn't realize, I wasn't trying to make them uneditable. That was just my mistake.
And
Okay.
just so everybody knows, I do the minutes for Finance Committee, and they are like, there is so much minutia in their minutes. So if I put too much detail, I apologize. If you guys saw the 7 pages of minutes each week that I do for that committee, you would understand why I have all the detail.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to eliminate stuff, that's totally fine.
I didn't have any, real question on Lynn's edits. But there were items where there were omissions, where there was a question as to who asked what, and we can clarify that and then finalize them once and for all.
Okay.
I don't think any of this any longer is an embarrassment.
You know, Mr. Chairman, I'll disagree with that. I think the way you do that is you say among the issues that were raised, and you don't start saying who said what and this and that. And almost the same thing even on Matthews, you know, questions were asked about the quality of the wrap around the building.
Yeah.
And you don't really want to say, well, you know, that just complicates the minutes, and you end up putting words in the different people's mouths that weren't correct. I think you just keep it. These are the issues we considered. It's in the minutes. Then you go to the decision, and hopefully, if it was a significant issue, it's addressed in the decision. I would be really opposed to it. X member said this, Y member said that. I think that's. I think it leads also to disunion in the group, frankly.
I understand. I do understand that.
I think, Michael, the sort of my suggested edits for the most part were members of the board asked, these following questions, as opposed to quoting anybody in particular. I sort of was following that, Jerry's approach.
Okay, all right, okay. I don't think that we have any disagreement here on the approach, except that I would like to be able to, relatively soon, present to the board minutes for adoption so that we can file minutes that don't have a draft on them. Now, about the decisions. I've had some help over the years, most recently by Jerry, who has offered and has actually written drafts of 2 decisions. Who wants to learn how to write decisions? Who wants to take over? Who wants to be chair? Is Emily tired of being the clerk? We don't have to. I keep bringing this up, not because I'm tired of being the chair or that I'm tired of writing decisions, but there's a time when you become stale, and everyone deserves to have the chance to be chair and manage the board. And I've been I've been sitting in the chair for a long time, And I think that I ought to be moving on. We're actually, technically, we should be doing that by the end of the fiscal year which would be by June 30th. So I don't know that we need to talk about this tonight, but I'd really like to step down. I'd like to, and I could do it at any time. I'd like to teach one or more my way, a method to write decisions, and have them so that there's integrity in the Superior Court. Because once a couple of years, we end up there because of the many different reasons. Because there's a dispute between abutters, because there's a lot at financial stake, and some of this has nothing to do with the way our decisions are or the way we conduct our hearings. It's just that there's a lot going on. So maybe somebody could speak now and want to take over as chair, or you could speak with me privately, but I stand ready to continue on and do what I have been doing until the select board tells me to stop. The thing is this, that a year and a half ago, when there's a limitation, I think it's to 2 or 3 terms. I ran that out. And then I asked for reappointment, and I had to tell the board that I'd start to train a successor. And no one's really been clamoring at my front door to do that. And I don't think I can ask for another reappointment, but I'm willing to ghost decisions and to train. And it's not magic. It's habit and preparation. And I'm willing to do that and help.
I'm not going to volunteer for anything, I'll tell you that. I've done this for close to 30 years. But I would like to just say, my experience has been that, excuse me, Emily, but whoever was the clerk at the time was the one that was responsible for preparing the decision, certainly in my experience. And that decision then would be typed by a secretary and then provided to the chair for review. And the chairman then would review it and process it in the manner that you were alluding to. And with respect to the difficulty, I mean, it's basically a template process. I mean, to be honest, once you've done 1 or 2, it's not exactly brain surgery. There are some that are far more difficult, such as a 40B, no question there. And I can also say in my experience, there were times where it was a unique case. I would ask the lawyer that was presenting the case to write the decision. So there's a lot of different ways that it can be handled. And that's all I can say about it. I recognize that our chairman has been writing a lot of them. And I was kind of surprised, to be honest, that he took that responsibility. The other choice would be to, farm it out. There is a clerk my understanding again from the old days, that the clerk, that meant he or she prepared the decision. It's also not something that the chairman couldn't delegate to a person who wanted to volunteer to do it in a particular case. So at least from my standpoint, that's the history, and you guys can decide what you want to do, but that's the way it's been.
And that adequately states the different choices in the way that it's been handled. There's one other, and that's in Dennis, the town planner does the drafts. I think it might be done that way too in Chatham, George.
Interesting.
But the culture now has been since, and maybe during Robert Osterberg's incumbency, and when he passed the baton to me, the chair has been the draftsman of the decisions. I don't know that Robert circulated them. And
Mr. Chairman, may I make a suggestion?
yes,
First of all, I'm not a candidate in coming forward for any more responsibility, but I do think that there's some benefit. I think there's a lot of benefit if you were to, if we have started a rotation of each member writing a decision on a rotating basis. That relieves you of the burden. I think it's an educational process for all the members, and I think it allows other people to take positions of responsibility sooner on the committee. I think that I sort of second what George says. I've been embarrassed that so much of the work has fallen on you. I felt badly about that for many years. And I think we ought to just start a rotation. That's my opinion. And everybody learns to write a decision. And I think that helps the learning scale of the angle of what do they call that, learning angle of how the committee works.
that's fine. And I'm not complaining. I just wonder whether that would dissuade further individuals from seeking to participate on our board. We have an extremely good and diverse board right now, Jerry, and I wouldn't want to think that having opinions written on circuit would be a barrier to attracting.
As George Kirkley states, it isn't rocket science, and it's more of a template. And once you do a few of them, there are a couple, every once in a while you get a tough one, and then that would be a decision, that would be a question for the board who does it. But the routine decisions are, as George has adequately said, it's more or less a template, and you write a few of them and you've got it down. I don't find it to be, I did this too, I found it to be kind of simple, and I don't think it'd be a great burden. And yet it made me pay attention to what was going on in the hearing, pay more attention than I otherwise would have.
Well, okay, then let me ask whether anyone has a real objection or reservations about having the decisions assigned. I don't want that kind of discussion in a hearing that's truly public. This is the time to have it. Does anyone object to that particular process? Well, then,
No,
No,
good.
I was going to say this is an unfun task. Everybody should share it.
Well, then what we'll do is,
I have to raise some level of reservation about it. I just have to. I think that we're giving too much credit to me for my intelligence. The notion that it's a boilerplate and I'll just fill it in and it'll happen by just looking at it once and paying attention once, with all due deference. It increases my commitment to the board in a manner that I'm not 100% comfortable with without further reflection.
that's okay. Then but if we know what the agenda is, and I could request or approach a member or two before a meeting starts privately and ask whether they would consider, or whether they would write the decision on a particular application, then you could say no.
That sounds good to me.
Okay? And that way, there's no one's being put on the spot. You could say no to me without beeping.
Well, to you, I might even say yes.
Okay, all right.
Who to ask first?
Bruce, I asked Bruce, he said no. I've come to you, George.
Well, I wasn't thinking of doing it quite like that, but then I could do that with some kind of diplomacy, and that would be helpful, and it would prepare the board, at least to some extent, for eventual succession, whatever shape that might be. And in the meanwhile, if anyone does have a burning desire to succeed me as chair, or needs further information on how to train for it, I'm always willing to talk privately.
I suppose that this is more appropriate for a private conversation too, but I'm surprised that nobody stepped forward, because I thought there might be some interest, not on myself, and if people are being shy, we didn't take the format of saying, would anybody like to propose somebody for the chair and have an election, and people could decline if they want. But if this is a rare meeting for us, I'd like to push a little on it. Michael is very generous and conciliatory and easygoing. And before we leave this for another year, and we're sharing the decision making at a certain level, and that's a good thing. Is there anybody who wants to take on the chairing of these meetings in the light of I'm blocking on a word, I hate being 80, on the word that says things are distributed to a variety of people? I'm looking right at you, Mr. Cole.
So I have a similar term as Michael, in fact, I think, in that we both are committed through next June. I'll be surprised if I can hang on that long, given all my other commitments. I think I'm the longest standing member. I've enjoyed it tremendously. I've enjoyed both Michael's leadership and his predecessor, Robert Osterberg. I'm not in a position where I can step up. I was at one time in that vice chair role, and so I did have the opportunity to run some meetings, and my hat goes off to Michael. It's not easy. There's tons more preparation both before the meeting and after to get it done, and it's time that I can't find anywhere right now to do it. So I appreciate you suggesting that, but
my apologies for putting you on the spot.
I'll be lucky to hang on by my fingernails here for another 16 months.
So Bruce, I agree with you. We should push a little bit, just not let the night go. I'll tell you why I can't. I'm the newest member. I'm not a lawyer. And I would never.
Two things in your favor.
I would never volunteer to do it right now. I will take on learning how to do some simple decisions, and I will take a burden of doing some decisions, but I'm the least good person of the group to even think about it. So take me out of the equation as well. So we're down now to 3.
Well, of course, I take myself out of the equation, but I want to say you have been a remarkable addition to our board. You may not know it. I would know, but I'm telling you, you have been immensely helpful to us in our
thank you.
And thinking about things. Thank you.
I've been thinking I'm fairly clueless, but that's okay. That's good to hear.
I'd like to second what Bruce just said.
I agree.
Thank
you.
I agree too, and I think we ought to start a program of preparing Lynn to take over as chairman.
Yeah, right.
No, I'm serious. I think when you get writing decisions, and I couldn't think of a better chairman.
Yeah, right. I know.
I think we keep Michael as long as we can, but I think that to consciously start a program of preparing you to become the chairman, I think is an excellent committee.
Okay,
So we're-
if you become chairman, I'll write an opinion.
Okay, we're down to Jerry and George and Emily.
As I said before, I've done this for too long. I'm basically too old, and I will not, should I be chosen, which I don't think I will be, commit to be chairman or vice chairman. I think the point is made validly that we need new people on the committee, or you need new people on the committee. And there are some people here that very clearly have the capability to move up to chairman and certainly can be trained as vice chairman for a short period of time, or however it comes to pass. I've done it for 30 years. It's been fun, both in this particular state and other states. And but I'm not going to do it anymore.
I don't want to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, but is there any possibility that you would want to be the vice chair then? Just have that title, that sort of, if you will, organizationalizes, makes official in some way the role that we are hoping and you are considering moving into. It's not a commitment, but it's certainly, we turn to you as a backup if necessary for a meeting. We'd all support you, obviously. Anyhow, not necessary, but just a thought.
If you're looking,
One of my challenges is I do spend a few months not there. I spend a few months down south, and that's an issue, I think. Right now when we're on Zoom, it's no problem. But and I've always said if we have something controversial, I'll zip back. It's a 2-hour flight from where I am to Boston, so it's no big deal. But and I'm in on the Cape most of the time, but that's an issue for me. So, so and that could be a problem because you can participate by, I don't know if everyone knows this, you can participate by phone or Zoom when we're back to doing things live, but you can't be counted as a member of the quorum. Right, Michael? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. So
I suspect that the pandemic has taught us how to do business in different ways, and maybe that will be changed. But I don't think anyone's going to look at that technicality overnight with. I have periodically spent some time, maybe 8 to 10 weeks out of the state during my incumbency.
okay.
But either someone else took routine meetings in my absence, or nothing happened. For some reason, the winter can be kind of barren, even of hearings. So that wasn't really a problem, and no one ever complained about it.
Okay.
But I know that Mr. Mulligan also spends in an ideal year would spend a block of time somewhere on the east coast of Florida.
I spend 3 months away. I'm not interested in taking on. I'd take on writing decisions, but I'm not interested in taking on the chairman's role. Again, I'm away for 3 months, and it's not a 2-hour plane ride. It's a 5 or 6. 4, whatever it is for. But I wouldn't come back I wouldn't feel obliged to come back. I think the course is, if I was hoping George or Matthew would take it. I think they're both the most knowledgeable members aside from the chairman. But I would suggest that we elect Lynn as vice chairman and start that as a course of part of an educational campaign to get her ready when and if Michael leaves. I also think that Michael shouldn't feel pressure to leave. I'm familiar with one person who dominates a very important committee, and dominates with whatever her title is, dominates a committee here and has for, well, as long as I've lived here, and that's 1996. So, and there's no movement to remove her. So I don't know why you feel pressure to do that, Michael, but be that as it may. But anyway, I think the course is, what I would recommend is that Michael stay on as chairman, as long as he's willing, but that we elect Lynn as vice chairman with the idea that it'll be a training program for chairman.
Seconded.
Third.
Lynn, I don't know if I expected the meeting to take the slant. Would you consider that?
Yeah, I would. If you all think that my being gone for 3 months, and as I said, I would be back for controversial things, and I would participate by whatever, Zoom or phone on all of them, but I won't be physically present probably for 3 months, or only intermittently. If that's okay, then I would.
Very good. Then, is there any further discussion on the motion to appoint Lynn Eckholt as vice chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals in the town of Orleans?
I just have two more very quick comments. I know hours getting late. Number one is I would just make a plug for continuing this Zoom format as long as the rules allow. I think it allows more people to participate more easily, irrespective of where you are at the time the meeting's going on. It allows, those that travel for work or pleasure or whatever to be able to log on and participate. So I'd make a plug for that format, which I think does play into the current discussion, number one. And number two, I'd put a plug in for Jerry to consider being moving into the vice chair role to back Lynn up if and when the time comes that Lynn moves from vice chair into chair. I think Lynn, knowing that she has support and somebody behind her when that next move happens, might help with the whole transition. So sorry to put you on the spot, but.
Well, I'm happy to do what I can to support. I have talked with Lynn. She has a passion for this stuff that has been obvious to all of us. And I think she's the natural, and as she says, I'd vote for her for chairman now, but I think she needs, in fairness.
Yeah, I don't know all I need to know. I'm positive of that.
You couldn't possibly in the short term you've been here, but I think if we consciously have you more involved, I think that learning curve is the word I was searching for. The learning curve would be very steep. But except Matt, I'm happy to do that if that facilitates things.
I don't know if I treat that as an amendment to the motion, but it sounded as a suggestion that we could proceed with the election of our appointment of Lynn Eckholt as vice chair. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's a virtual meeting, so we'll roll call. Mr. Marnick, yes. Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Ms. Van Giesen,
Yes.
Mr. Wall,
Yes.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Mr. Todd,
Yes.
and Ms. Eckholt, no need to vote.
Good.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you for your acceptance. Thank you for your service, and I'm absolutely delighted with that.
Once upon a time, I thought I was going to go to law school. It's clear I should have.
Now, I'll just make a comment about that, Lynn. I'll make a comment about that. I don't think chairman has to be a lawyer or even should be a lawyer.
Really? Okay, good.
I mean, this is citizen government. It's not lawyer. Citizen government, and I feel very strongly about that. Government is advantaged by Michael being a lawyer, obviously, but it's not necessary. The same way we shouldn't make our building commissioner a lawyer. That's why I was very offended by the language, and that's why I voted differently than you. I don't think you have to be a lawyer to manage town government. And the trend in America, that everybody has to have a law degree, is a terrible trend. And I would resist it with vigor in town government. So that's my soapbox for tonight.
I guess you're not a lawyer.
I actually am a lawyer, but I don't practice. I saw a easier and brighter path. I have a law degree. I haven't practiced in 50 years.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that concludes our business. This has been a rewarding meeting in ways that I have no way of fully explaining. And thank you all. Are there any further remarks?
Move to adjourn.
It's a second on the motion to adjourn.
Second?
Very well. All those in favor, this may be done by acclamation. Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all, and thank